of quantum physics. And quantum physics have found that when an experiment is carried out, the person who is conducting the experiment is part of the experiment, but does not acknowledge, science does not acknowledge that generally. Conventional science doesn't acknowledge that the person that is there observing the experiment is part of, in some strange way, is part of that experiment. They, in other words, they're influencing. It's not totally this bit, and this bit interacting and what happens in the middle, because there's this bit and this bit and this bit too. So it's not quite as you think. A long time ago I collected a very ancient Encyclopedia Britannica, a full set of Encyclopedia Britannica, which was from the previous century. It was the 1800s, and in that it stated quite categorically that something that was made of metal would not float. So metal boats would never be realized. And I think it also said that something that was heavier than air would not fly. There was the obvious famous case of and I should really, just for the sake of bringing up this example, I should remember the guy's name. He's gone down in history infamously now. But he was in charge of the patent office in America, and at one point he stated, we may as well close the patent office now, because everything that is worth anything has been invented. So why are we bothering with the patent office? Nobody's going to invent anything else now of any. And then after that we went on to go to the moon. We invented spaceships, and well, maybe not spaceships, but we invented the wherewithal to be able, no matter how clumsily, to go to the moon. So it's one of those things that it's so easy to discount things and call it mumbo jumbo. And as soon as you call it mumbo jumbo, as soon as you call it hallucinations, as soon as you discount it, then you've lost what it would take to understand what that thing may or may not be. Now let's look at the idea of time. And if you think about time, think about a man standing on top of one of the great pyramids, right? He's standing on top of the great pyramids, and he's looking down on someone who is starting at one corner of the Great Pyramid, and he's going to walk around counterclockwise or whatever, and he's going to walk around the Great Pyramid. So he's going to walk around like this. Now, he is in one time. The man at the top is looking down at this happening, and all that the man at the top has to do is to turn like this. They're both in the same time, but one has a different perception of it. Now, I know that that's not going to hold out for a lot of people, but if you can see it in the context, then you may get it. Which brings us to context again, and I've talked about this before. Context, and going out of context is the biggest killer of actually getting something over, ever. It's a killer. Now, if you imagine for a moment that you're going to have any given situation, and the one that I always put, probably boringly so, but you've got the two guys who are sitting on the sidewalk, and they've just managed to find enough money to buy a beer, and they're having a beer, and one is saying to the other, yeah, well, give me a Ferrari anytime. That's the best car in the entire universe, is a Ferrari. And his friend said, "Oh, come on, give me a break. It doesn't even hold up at all to a Lamborghini. A Lamborghini is the best. I wouldn't be seen dead in a Ferrari." And a rich guy who is on his way out to get in his Ferrari, in real, says to the two men, "You are so stupid. If either of you were given a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, you'd sell it and just buy another beer." Who is stupid, really? Not the two guys, because the two guys know their situation very, very well, and they know the context in which they're talking. Their context is a dream. If I could dream for a moment I was in a Ferrari, that would be the best thing in the world for me. And the other guy says, "No, it's not the best thing in the world. A Lamborghini's the best thing in the world." And they both know only too well that they will never sit in either of those cars. They'll be too busy trying to find enough money for the next beer to sit back on the sidewalk and chat. The man who took what they said totally out of context is the one who is being, at least momentarily, stupid. He didn't get it. They know that they're never going to have a car. They're never going to have a car, let alone a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. But he sees it in a different context. So all information is contextual. So however you look at the face that's on this side of me or that side of me, however you look at that, you have to try to choose a context which will enable you to get some sense out of it. Now, if you think, well, science has all of this down, you know, the science has it down there. They've done many experiments where they've tried to invoke a spirit, and they've tried to do this and they've tried to do it, and it's all failed. And if you look at how our bodies are built, if you look at how they're built and how they actually function, we are dysfunctional bodies. And science has, in its incredible arrogance, discounted, I think, 98% of our DNA. Now, if you've ever seen the DNA, that thing that just twirls around like that in a beautiful pattern, they've discovered 100% of the DNA, and about 2% is what we are working on. I think 2 strands. But it would be possible if the other could be activated. We would be working on, I think, a 12-strand DNA. And I know that there'll be people who have studied this and will knock my common man descriptions down, and yes, you'll be right, I'm just a common guy. But I know something. When something is there as the bit that they've discovered is a blueprint of what we are about, and 98% of it is not activated, I don't have to be a scientist to say it's junk. 98% of what we are about is junk. Are you kidding me? Who's the dumb one here? And I think in this particular case, it's not me for saying that the 98% is about something. So disbelieving, you can disbelieve all you want, but gradually, we are finding out just how little we know. And what it amounts to is that 98% of the junk that we do know is going to change. One of the things that is holding us back, and boy, I'm going from one to another here, one of the things that's going is that oil is so massively invested in by the powers that be. And the powers that be, even us dumb clucks, have gradually realized that 2% of the wealth is owned, 98% of the wealth is owned by 2% of the population. What's wrong with that picture? So I'm trying to make it so that all of those things, present all of those things that would be so easy to discount as mumbo-jumbo, as unproven, as disproven by science, so that it's possible to view it. Now, science and religion are separate. They keep science and religion separate. And it seems to me that it was like a mafia meeting of the families in New York or Chicago, and they all got together and they said, Louis the Legs will hold the east side, and Jack Diamond will hold the right side. And they divvied everything up, and they said, science, we'll take care of the science, and you take care of the religion, because the two have no place together. And so now it's one of those where you have to be either religious and believe in creationism and discount that off, or you've got to be scientific. And of course, then you would be thinking about evolution. And yet Darwin himself, as I've mentioned many times before, was heard on radio saying in an interview, well, as far as my theory goes, it can be knocked down quite easily by looking at the human eye. The human eye could not be designed from the ground up. It had to be designed from up down, from the top down, rather than the bottom up. And I've probably gone on far too long for Beth to ever edit this, and so I should quit. Keep on at least not disbelieving. Whether you believe or not in a lot of what's been said, keep on at least not disbelieving. I always mention something, and my friend Nuran Thapa says that David Wilcock, and his book on what is that book called? Oh God, I've lost the book, but I think it was called the force field. And in the book, he gives a lot of examples of research that was carried out that will never reach the headlines because it probably will be suppressed. And the one that I particularly liked, I liked most of the stuff that he quoted about, about the research that's been done in pyramids in Russia. Russia, everybody thinks about Russia as being backward, and boy, Russia are up there, and they are investing in all kinds of things that are only very quietly invested in the US. But one of the cases that David Wilcock says was when he witnessed an example of hypnosis, and a man was called to the stage with his daughter. He came with his daughter, and the guy sat down. The daughter was there as part of the whole thing, and yes, it was entertainment, but they hypnotized the man, and while he was under hypnosis, they said, when you come to, you will come to and feel exactly normal. Your perception will apparently be as it always is, except for one thing. You won't be able to see your daughter. And then they took him out of his state. And then they did an experiment. They stood his daughter in front of him, and he didn't see her. And then they went behind his daughter. So here's the man, as you are looking at me. Here's his daughter standing in front of him. And they went behind the daughter and they held up a watch. And they said, "Can you see what I'm holding in my hand?" And he said, "Yes, it's a watch." He's looking through the solid body of his daughter, which he can't see. What kind of a watch is it? Well, it's a wristwatch. And then said, "Can you see the time?" And it went on. And then finally, they brought the man back out of his hypnosis. And he then, of course, saw his daughter normally. And he didn't believe them when they told him, we made it so that you couldn't see your daughter, and when you came to, you couldn't see her. And he said, "I don't believe it." So evidently, our reality was able to be changed so much at that moment that he could be told that he would not see that person who was near and dear to him. And it wasn't that he looked through her, she just wasn't there for him. But the watch was, and the hand, and the person who was holding it, the hypnotist. So things that are extremely strange, if you disbelieve, you'll say, "Well, it was just a trick." Yeah, he knew the guy who was pretending to be hypnotized and the daughter who was part of the trick. Yeah, okay, yeah, disbelieve. Maybe you could learn something something you could actually use if you could learn to just not disbelieve. Maybe you could learn to believe that you can do a hell of a lot more than you think you can do. Maybe you could be a hell of a lot more happy than you are, more fulfilled. You could do a job which would bring you greater joy instead of that torture that you go through from Monday to Friday at the moment. Maybe might become one magical word, along with the other phrase, "What if? What if I could do that?" This is a foreigner in the Philippines. Thank you for listening to my waffling. Bye for now. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Just don't disbelieve.